there, it's Kathy. Welcome to another episode of A Journey into Cybersecurity. And today, the episode is sponsored by TNT Creative Group. And I have a very special guest today. It's an honor to have her here with us. Just a really quick recap about the purpose of the Triangle Net and why I started this podcast. And the idea is that cybersecurity is a space that I work in. A lot of young people don't quite know what that is or what that means or what these people look like. And they don't all have hoodies on all day long, and they're not just sitting in people's basements. And so what I would like to do is just provide you with the stories of people who work or have worked in cybersecurity, kind of putting a face to the people in cybersecurity and to really demystify what this is all about. And today is a special episode and is dedicated to all the Latina chicas in the world, because today I've invited Frances Baldwin. Hi, Frances.
Hi, Kathy. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for joining us today. So, Frances, assume your audience are people in middle and high school. So, how do you introduce yourself to them? Do you tell them what your title is, what company you work for, or do you just say, this is what I do?
I can give you all of the above. So my name is Frances Donate Baldwin, right? Donate is my maiden name. I grew up in Puerto Rico. I now work as a my title is Data Center Engineering Operations Cluster Manager. That is a mouthful. And so the short version of it is that I manage the data centers for AWS, Amazon Web Services in the San Francisco cluster. So we have a group of 11 data centers, and so I manage the engineering systems that support them.
So what does AWS does? Because when you think about Amazon, you think about all the things we buy online, but it's a little bit more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So AWS stands for Amazon Web Services, and basically it is the branch of Amazon that provides cloud services. And cloud is anything from basically, if you think of compute power in somebody else's environment, then you would rent them or buy that service from Amazon. And so that's what we do.
Yes, and Amazon really has the lion's share of all cloud services in the world, right?
Amazon started as a web company, right? Where, everyone can buy everything from their toothbrush to your, high-end watches or anything in between, right? And so in order to support that demand, we started building these amazing data centers, right? And so huge internet connections, huge services, right? And then within that, then we also needed huge storage so that we could maintain all the data that we needed to maintain, from the web pages to the customer information, all of that stuff, right? And then it became obvious that there was a business need for industry to actually, use these services. Your regular small business doesn't necessarily have the resources to buy all the infrastructure that you need to run, like your email services or whatever application your business may need to do. So running those data centers is super expensive, and it also requires a lot of people, and the average company doesn't need to focus on all of that stuff, right? Like, let them focus on what they do best. So Amazon saw the opportunity to actually sell that as a service, and we've, grown like crazy.
Yes, because now every business, small, big, private, public, even government, is using AWS to run their applications, their own IT infrastructure, and so forth. So the world is kind of running on you guys, and that kind of leads to the question, what's the importance of cybersecurity in what you do? Because you and I, we crossed paths in your previous role as executive director for cybersecurity at Agio, and that's where I got to meet you and work with you, and so I know you've kind of been in cybersecurity. Is it still part of your job? Does it matter at all when you're working with cloud services?
Absolutely. So I can give you even a little bit of a step back. So I started my career as a network engineer, and then I worked in for a hedge fund. And so as a network engineer, you do a lot of a lot of security kind of functions, right? Like back when I started, there, cybersecurity was not a field in of in itself, and so
it was a feature.
Exactly, it was another thing that you needed to worry about, right?
Yeah.
But to answer your specific question, is of course there's a huge need and focus in cybersecurity, from everything to making sure that, like, as a customer, there's concern that if you move data to the cloud, that it's not going to be as secure as if you were managing your environment. Now, all of those myths have been debunked, but as a provider of cloud services, we're hyper vigilant, right? Not only physical security, but also cybersecurity, to make sure that customers are comfortable and trusting us with.
And our younger generations don't really understand, and blurp, you'll delete that, that's fine. I work in cybersecurity, and
their data.
Go back a little bit to Frances, the little chica from Puerto Rico. So tell me a little bit, how was it growing up in Puerto Rico for you?
I mean, so I don't know any different, right? So for me, it's normal. Puerto Rico is a small island, 100 by 35 miles. We are a part of the United States, but we also have a very different culture. So I grew up, speaking Spanish, very small, tight knit family. I grew up going to my grandparents' house every weekend, very close knit relationship with my aunts and uncles and cousins. And so all of these people, played a huge influence in, kind of like my choices as it related to what I wanted to do when I was in middle school and high school, from extracurricular activities to where and what to study in college.
So when you were in middle school, what were you interested in? What were some of the things?
So when I was like early middle school, I was all into being cool and not getting good grades. And so I switched schools in seventh grade. So sixth grade, straight A's, perfection. And then I go into a new school in seventh grade, and it's like I was too cool for school and didn't study. And then all of a sudden I didn't get straight A's, and my dad was not happy. He, basically told me that I was not going to amount to anything if I didn't get my act together. And so, at some point, probably second semester, seventh grade, then I started kind of like, well, maybe I can still be cool and, maybe get A minuses, so that my dad wouldn't get in my case. Now, in my school, middle school was seventh, eighth, and ninth, right? So ninth grade, even though it's technically high school, it was still middle school. And it's funny because, like, I never really tried super hard, but I also never thought that I was anything special. And my ninth grade math teacher kind of like pulled me aside and asked me if I wanted to participate in the math club with the high school kids. And it never even occurred to me that math was something that I could be good at, because I just did it, right? And then that's kind of like when I got hooked, right?
Yeah.
I started kind of like going to the meetings with the big kids and trying out the problems, and it was like, I found my calling.
Wow. So what if that math teacher hadn't invited you? Do you think you would have had like a different life? Was that like a pivotal moment?
I think it was, but I think eventually um I would have turned it, or I would have figured it out, because
Yeah.
um my grandfather was a civil engineer, and so when I was little, I used to go on the sites with him, and I had like my little hard hat, and like I would like do all these things. So I think that um it may have been later on, but I probably would have figured it out. I'm
Yeah.
hoping. I would like to think. I mean, I still give her credit, but
Yeah.
yeah.
That is so cool. That is so cool. Any other teachers that have made an impact on you during middle or high school that kind of moved you more and more into a direction of engineering?
Yeah, so my geometry teacher, he was a big proponent of reaching for the sky, right? Like he was all about you try to go as high as you can, and then you'll go places. So he would talk to us about this programs that they have for rising seniors in great universities in the states. And he's like, if you get selected, you can go to one of these schools for like a summer camp kind of a thing. And so that kind of like gave me the idea that it's like, oh, if I do really well, then I may be selected for one of these programs, and then I can go. But I think that the biggest influence in all of it was even earlier my grandmother, when I was, I don't know, 6 or 7. And I know I'm kind of like going back in time, but when I was 6 or 7,
It's so important to understand, who are those people that kind of
yeah,
pushed you a little bit.
yeah. So the background of my grandmother is she's pretty amazing, and I didn't realize it until I was an adult. She grew up in a coffee plantation in the west side of Puerto Rico, so not the big city or anything. And her parents put her on a boat and shipped her off to the United States in the middle of World War II, and she got a degree in chemistry.
Oh,
As
wow.
a woman, Puerto Rican woman in the 1940s, right? She never came back for the full 4 years, right? Because it was ridiculously expensive, and it's a couple of weeks trip, and so I didn't know any of this, but she was pretty amazing, right? And so
Yeah.
when I was 6 or 7, she sat me on her lap and she said, when you go to college, you have to go to the best school that you can get into, right? And she said, if you can go into a school, if you can go to a great school in the United States, that would be amazing, right? Like that would be a differentiator. So I always had that. That's why I think probably like I went through that whole too cool for school phase. But I think that it always kind of like trickled in the back of my head that I needed to reach for more.
Right. That's fascinating. That is just awesome. Um, and then you chose electrical engineering for college. How did that happen?
So in 4th grade, I decided that I was going to be an astronaut, and it wasn't. I know, I know. It wasn't. Little kid wants to be a fireman, or I want to like. I meant it, and I mean, I still. I have a deal with my husband and the kids that if NASA calls, I'm going. So if NASA calls, I'm here. So what was the way to become an astronaut, to become a mechanical engineer. So I started out in mechanical engineering, and then sophomore year, it was obvious that it was not the thing for me. Like I'm not good at visualization or just kind of like physical things, right? But as part of the engineering program, you have to take like you have to take the regular physics, then you have to take electricity and magnetism, and then you have to take optics or something. And so I was really struggling because I'm like, what am I gonna do if I'm not gonna do mech-e, right? And I was in this electricity and magnetism class, and it was easy, and I kind of liked it. And then I had also taken a couple of computer science courses, and I was really good at coding, even though I had never done it before, right? So I didn't have some major calling, right? Thinking, oh, this is what I want to do when I grow up, right? Like I had this idea that I wanted to get into NASA, and so I needed an engineering degree, and to get that, and electrical engineering was kind of like what I liked, right? So it's just kind of weird.
But it's so awesome that you reached for the stars, you set out the course, you gave it a try, you said, okay, well, this doesn't seem to be working out so well, so let's try this, and now you're working in the cloud, so kind of worked out for you.
I'm making my way there.
You're halfway in between.
Yep.
Who knows? You're still very, very young.
I haven't given up.
So did you then make that actual program that your teacher was talking about that little scholarship or something?
Yeah, so I applied to a couple of them, and I actually ended up going to Women in Engineering at University of Notre Dame. So it was amazing. It was 3 weeks, and they had it was a program for women, right? So it was a bunch of 15, 16-year-old girls, and they gave us kind of like an intro to all the different engineering functions. And we had field trips for different factories and plants in the Indiana, Chicago, South Bend, Indiana is about an hour and a half away from Chicago. So we did field trips in Western Indiana, and then also we went to Chicago one time. And we also did like intro to programming. So that was the first time that I had ever done anything on a computer. And it was super intimidating because there were this other kids in the program that had done computer classes, and they had computers in their houses. And so it was a little intimidating, but it kind of got me on my way.
That is so fantastic. And were you the one of other Puerto Rican girls in that program, or were you the only one who ended up making?
I was the only one. Yeah. And it was funny because so in Puerto Rico, I mean, we speak English, but we had, we speak Spanish, but we are taught English since kindergarten, right? Wow. And so I thought I was pretty conversational, and then when I got there, it became so clear that I had to work so hard just to follow the conversations, right? And I remember sitting in, like, we stayed in the dorms, right? So I remember sitting in the floor, we were talking about like TV shows that people were watching, and they were just joking around. Sometimes I didn't understand the words, right? Because I just had to focus and pay attention. It was hard.
Yes. And so after that program, you applied to different colleges. How did that work for you?
Yeah, so I applied to 9 colleges, 1 in Puerto Rico, and then 8 in the States. Wow. And then I didn't get into my dream school, but
Which was
I ended
that?
up MIT. I wanted to go to
Oh,
MIT. Yeah.
oh, good.
Um, well, you have to reach
Yeah,
for the stars.
I love it.
Yeah. And then I ended up going to Cornell, which at the time I didn't realize it. It was absolutely the best fit for me. So I have a son that is applying to colleges now, and he's super stressed out, right? Like, how is this gonna end up? I always tell people it's like it works out, right? Like, I mean, you have to work hard and you need to work on your essays and your applications, but the best thing that happened to me was not getting into MIT, because I think not, I mean, I have a lot of friends that went to MIT and they did great, but it just wasn't the right school for me.
Yeah,
Right. And so I ended up going to Cornell, and it was amazing.
right. And
Yeah.
since then, you've stayed in the United States, or did you go back? What happened?
I never went home even for the summers. So
Wow.
I feel so bad for my mom because
Yeah.
I would go home for a week or two, and then I did a couple of um, I did summer school. So I first got accepted. It was a 5-year engineering program for minority students. And the idea was that a regular engineering degree at Cornell takes 4 years. And they had recognized that there were minority students that didn't have the same opportunities that, you know,
Mhm.
other kids had. So they developed a 5-year program where the first 2 years are split in three, so that it
Mhm.
gives you a little bit more time and give you a little bit, more of a chance to get that foundation going, right?
Yeah.
um when I got to college, like, I took um calculus and physics in high school, and the very very first day of my first calculus class at Cornell, it was already over my head, right?
Mhm.
Where I had friends that had, like, they did the first 3 semesters in their high school. So this program was really meant to um, give kids a chance to kind of like catch up, right?
Yeah.
So I ended up, the summer after my freshman and senior and sophomore year, I stayed and I took one of the calculus classes and a physics class to try to catch up. And then the summer between sophomore and junior year, I took an electrical engineering class to also catch up. And eventually I ended up graduating in 4 years. Um, so yeah, I never went home.
And throughout this whole process, high school, the scholarship in the United States, and then applying through college and going through this whole process of being in college, was there any internal, fears, uncertainties, doubts that um, usually young people go through? What did you go through, or was it just like the best thing ever, and you just stayed constantly positive? Like, were there ever like bumps in the road?
So in high school, no. In high school, I was super confident. Never, and I think that part of that was just kind of like naivete or ignorance. It never even occurred to me that it was not going to be possible to
Yeah,
either go to college in the States or graduate. And then, like I said, the first class, like very first class, it was hard.
yeah.
And I remember going to my dorm, like, first couple of weeks, and I was just exhausted. And it occurred to me
Mhm.
that it was because English was not my first language. I had to pay so much attention, right?
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
just listening to the professors was a challenge, right?
yeah.
um and then you're surrounded by brilliant people. So all of that confidence that I had in high school and maybe my first day in college went away.
Yeah.
And it was a super humbling experience, right? I had to study more than the average kid. I
Mhm.
always felt like I did, right? Just to get by. And just also being a woman was different. Like I think it's a little bit different now, but when I was in my graduating class, there were 150 electrical engineers, and I was one of 6 women. So it
Wow.
it was not the norm to have,
Yes.
you know, girls go into difficult technical fields.
Yeah.
So you do question it, right?
Mhm.
I did. My mom had some cousins that were professional, very successful women. So I had them to kind of look up to. So I knew that it was possible, but you know, you always question it,
Yeah.
right? Or I did.
Did you have any professors or coaches, mentors, anybody who was kind of cheering you on throughout that process?
It, I had, so there was one woman, Mary Thompson. She was the kind of, I think, I actually don't remember her title, but I think she was like the person that ran the minority program in the engineering school. So she was super strict, and kind of like we would meet with her on, I don't know, every 2 weeks, and she was almost like that high school principal, that she was like, don't screw this up, right? Like, you have a good opportunity. So it wasn't so much of oh, you can do it. It was more like, like, your parents are paying a lot of money for this, don't screw this up, kind of a thing. But it was good, right? Because I knew that we could have messed it up. Yeah. And then I don't know, I think it was sophomore year, I had Professor Brown. I didn't talk to him that much. He was my advisor, but he just kind of like, just, I always remember that he never questioned whether I could do it, right? Like sometimes you always kind of like got this sense that it was like, oh, like, does she have it in her? And I never felt like he was questioning me. He just took me at face value. And so for that, I always appreciated him.
Yes, absolutely. That is so fantastic. Were there any jobs that you did on the side during college, or how did you transition into work in the workforce?
So I did a couple of like work study projects. I mean, jobs during college. My freshman year, I did tape backups at the hotel school at night, and that was a great job because I just have to put the tapes in, and then I could study. Then during the summer, I also worked in the bursar's office, right? But this wasn't like super related to what I was studying. And then summer between my junior and senior year, I worked for Professor Brown doing a research program. I honestly don't remember what the project was about, but it was, I remember I found out that there was this, I think it was like a government program or something that if you presented your, um, idea or your project, then they would pay you for it. And I thought that this was great because I could stay on campus and not have to go back home for the summer. And so I pitched it to him, and he's like, "Well, if you can get approved for the grant, then sure, I'll support you." So I honestly don't remember what it was, but I worked, and it was great because I worked alongside some PhD students, and so they taught me how to do Unix and all this stuff that I had never done. And then after so I went to grad school right after undergrad,
Yeah.
and so the summer in between my senior year and grad school, I worked for Cisco Systems in an internship. And that was pretty cool because back then, like, nobody knew what Cisco was. And there was a Cornell alum that had sent an email to one of the professors, and they had posted it in a bulletin board, right? Like, this is before the internet, before any of social media or anything. And so we had these bulletin boards where job postings would be posted. And so I saw that, and it was in New York City. I had never been to New York before, and I'm like, well, this is great. And if I get it, then I also don't have to go home for the summer. So I worked for Cisco summer between undergrad and grad school.
That's fantastic. So was that at One Penn Plaza, the big building
It
on
was.
34th
Yeah.
Street? That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool gig. Awesome. And so after grad school, what happened next?
So then I went to grad school for a year,
Wow.
and I went back to Cornell, 1 year program, master's in engineering, because my master plan was to design chips for computers, right? So I wanted to do VLSI and kind of like all this programmable logic. But because I had worked at Cisco during the summer, I also had a little bit of an interest in this networking thing that was just starting.
Yes.
And so I did my master's. What? I'm sorry?
This little thing called networking.
Yeah. Well, back then, nobody knew about it, right?
Right.
Like I used to tell people that I worked for Cisco, and they used to ask if it was the food company, because you have those trucks, right? Like SYSCO. And I was like, no, CISCO, as in San Francisco. And so I did my master's project on like defining a wireless protocol for, like, I don't know. It was an attempt at staying connected with networking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then I got a job with Cisco during, like, super early on, like right before finals. The first semester, I got a call from Nick Torre, who hired me for my internship and then full time. And they offered me a job to go back to New York. And so that was also a little bit not traditional, right? Because all my engineering friends were going either to Silicon Valley or Boston to like real engineering jobs. And so this was more of I was going to be a pre-sales engineer, basically, right? Yeah. So that was also interesting.
Yeah. So thanks to a little bulletin board on a wall and an
Who knew?
You got your first job at Cisco in New York City. Quite astonishing.
Yeah.
Amazing. It's just awesome to hear how these little breadcrumbs lead you to where you end up being.
And the thing about it is that it is so, you can almost say that it's so happenstance, right? Like, what if I had not responded to that bulletin board?
Yes.
Right? Like, what if I had not looked? I remember how there were like pieces of paper and you would like cut off.
Yes.
Right? And I sent this guy an email. You know, it's like, hi, I'm Francis.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. Well, your odds are better probably in those situations still compared to now. The whole world applies for the same job.
Yeah.
So you got to work at Cisco. You worked in finance at the hedge funds. You worked at Agile, where you headed up the managed detection and response services organization, and here you are at Amazon AWS, the world's largest cloud. And throughout, cybersecurity is like a little thread that keeps amplifying. How important is cybersecurity today?
I mean, it's huge. I mean, you've seen in the news every couple of weeks you see stories about infiltrations, and so I think people don't realize how at risk you can be if you don't actually protect yourself, right? Like, I think there was a time when I started my career where it was almost an afterthought, and now everyone that I talk to, you define your platform around the security, right?
Right.
if we're going to live in a digital world, we need to make sure that we are protecting our data and our, like, basically it's our assets, right? Everything from your personal information, but also your ideas and even silly stuff like your emails and your calendar, right? All of my stuff is in someone's cloud. And so I think it's important that we're mindful and conscientious about how we handle all that data.
Yeah. And so if anybody wanted to apply or go work in the technology field, let's say they want to become the next software developer or the next Mark Zuckerberg and come up with this great new platform and code some great app together, should they know the cybersecurity principles, or do you think that's still a possibility to get a job in tech without those skill set?
I think there is such a demand for people in technology that you can probably get a job without it. And then like when I hire people, I look for the person's interest in learning, and you can teach them. But if I was being strategic about how I wanted to prepare myself, or what I tell my kids, definitely you want to have a really strong foundation on cybersecurity, because it's going to differentiate you, and it also it's the way of, like, the new world, or the way things are going, right?
Yeah, totally. Let's talk a little bit about being a woman in technology, and let's talk about the concept of leaning in. It's something that for the younger people watching this or listening to, lean in was the concept that Sheryl Sandberg shared in her TED Talk and in her book. And basically, she gave some statistics about how few women make it into the leadership spheres of any kind of organization, whether we're talking corporate America or anywhere in the world. Really, women struggle to become leaders in an organization, and that can be a small company, a big company, or in the government even. And on top of that, women also get less access to opportunities, and they are usually paid less than their counterparts, their male counterparts. But Latina women have even more of a disadvantage than white women, and African American women even more, and so forth and so forth. So what's your take on Lean In?
So I actually read that book, and I thought it was super enlightening. And I had been in the professional workforce for probably 15 years when that book came out, and some of the stuff was stuff I had never even considered. I think that a lot of the stuff that they teach you when you're growing up, and maybe it's Hispanic culture, maybe it's different now for younger generations, but it was, girls are supposed to be polite, and you know your place, and you kind of like are doing a good job if you're just kind of like sitting there, right? And so one thing that stuck in my head, or kind of like caught my attention about that book, was like, sit at the table. When you walk into a conference room, don't just stay in the periphery. And so that is something literal, right? I used to do that all the time. I would walk into a conference room, and it didn't matter how senior I was in the room. I would, if there were chairs on the periphery, I would stay in the periphery. There's something metaphorical about it, that women, we need to feel comfortable speaking up and making our thoughts and opinions known, right? Like, there's all these studies that demonstrate that teams are super successful if they have diverse members. And so, of course, we're going to have different perspectives than than men, right? Or someone with, different cultural backgrounds, even different socioeconomical backgrounds. You're going to have different perspectives, but it's that, kind of like melting pot of all of these ideas that actually end up making a stronger team, making better products. And so when Sheryl Sandberg said that, lean in, right? Like, it's like, don't count yourself out, right? Like, speak up. And eventually, at the beginning, it felt, for me at least, it felt not authentic, and it very, I would like think about what I was going to say before I said it, and almost like very rehearsed. But as you do it more and more, it becomes more natural, to a point that now you can't even keep me out of the room.
And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But it's true, right? 51% of the United States population is female. Half the consumer base is female. So why not have female decision makers around products, marketing, sales, and major decisions being made at a strategic level? So I agree. And it's also an important takeaway to note that it's not the fact that men are discriminating against women. It are women who are sometimes undermining other women, or even this unconscious bias, because our society has spoon-fed us certain stereotypes about what a woman can and cannot do. My Barbie had a kitchen. She was not an astronaut for sure, right? So from a young age, we're kind of conditioned to think about what a woman cannot do. And for that reason, that unconscious bias is us women sometimes not giving other women the chance to prove themselves, to empower them to be a leader. And I think also us believing in ourselves and, going the extra mile and really putting ourselves outside of that comfort zone is perhaps worth a try. I think that you have really done a great job getting out of your comfort zone, leaving your home, leaving Puerto Rico, and never looking back, and leaning into these opportunities, going from Agio to Amazon, for instance. Let's talk about that for just quite a second, because you were living in Connecticut and now you live in California. So let's talk about that whole opportunity, how it came about, and what did it entail?
It was the opportunity of a lifetime. I mean, I love my job in Agile. There's nothing, I wasn't looking for a job. And I thought, I had gotten married, had 2 kids, one in high school and middle school. The kids had always lived in the same town, right? Like, so, I always thought that was just the way it was going to be, right? Like, we were going to be, a New England family. And then one day I get an email from Amazon, and it was like they were asking if I was interested in applying for this job that sounded too good to be true, right? And so, ironically, about 2 weeks before, I had this conversation with my husband about how this move to the cloud was changing the way the companies were working, right? And so at Agile, like you mentioned, I managed detection and response service. And so a lot of my customers were struggling with this, or not struggling, they were facing this decision whether to go to the cloud or not go to the cloud, right? And so I had this conversation with my husband that the cloud was definitely the way to go. And if you are an infrastructure person, like we call infrastructure the people that manage the data centers or the servers, that kind of a thing. So I said, if you are an infrastructure person, you want to work with companies, because the regular mom and pop shop is not going to have challenging jobs for those kind of people, right? And so, and I always said, if you want to work for networks, you work for Cisco. If you want to work for the cloud, you work for Amazon. I literally said that. And then I get this chance to interview at Amazon, but I knew that there were no data centers in Connecticut or anywhere near, right? And so the person that I was talking to said that they were in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I laughed and I chuckled and I said, "Oh, well, thank you for calling. Sure, I'll send you my resume," or something like that. I got off the phone. And so I texted my husband as a big joke and I said, "Ha ha, you're not gonna believe it. Amazon wants me to apply for a job in California. We're never moving, so I'm not even going to apply." And he was like, "What are you thinking? You need to give this a shot." And I was like, I am very much one of these people that I don't want to do something if there is no possibility for it happening. Like, I just thought this was wasted effort. And it's one thing if you go on an interview and you drive 20 minutes, right? And, you know, it's good experience and you check it out, but you don't fly across the country, right?
For an interview.
And so, for an interview. And so my husband was like, just send them the resume and talk to them and see what they say, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I do the phone screen, and my boss now was the person that phone screened me, and he was super smart, and you know, like I thought, like I can really learn a lot from this person. And so then a couple of days later, they're like, they want to fly me out. And I'm like, here we go again with the flying me to California, right? Like, it's going to take a day to get there, a day of interviews, a day to come back for something that we're never going to do because I have a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old. There is no way we're packing up our family and leaving, right? Yeah. And so my husband was like, just go, check it out. Like, you're not going to know. You don't know if you don't try, right? So off to California I go. And then I met the team and I was like, okay, this is really like too good to be true.
Yeah.
And a couple of weeks later, like actually not even a couple of weeks later, a couple of days later, they called and they said that I had gotten the job, but it was the end of June. And like I said, I have kids in high school, right? Yeah. So if we were going to do it, we needed to do it before school started. Right. And so in 4 weeks, we packed up 20 years of Connecticut, a husband, 2 kids, and a dog, and we came to California.
That must have been an epic road trip too, by the way.
It was an epic road trip. It was. Thank goodness before COVID.
Yes, I can only imagine. It's funny that you talk about your husband, because I saw a little video clip on Twitter from a professor at NYU Stern who was being interviewed by Stephanie Rule, and he teaches in the business school, and he always asks his I think it's economics students, you know, what is the most important decision that you'll ever make in your life? And usually they'll have these very smart ideas and answers, but at the end of the day, none of them answered the right answer, and that is the choice of your partner, the person you decide to marry or just decide to partner with for the rest of your life and maybe have children with. And obviously, in your case, that was a critical choice, but you made a good choice there because it sounded like your husband is truly someone who believes in you and supports you and was willing to pack up and move across a country with everybody in tow. So I have to commend that. It takes real partnership to do that, and I don't see that a lot, to be honest. So.
Yeah, no, I am super lucky. He believes in me more than I do.
Yeah. And you and I were talking about your husband, and it was interesting because I think it may be his background a little bit that has given him that perspective that you're an equal, right?
Mhm.
He saw you as an equal, and he supported you in this decision. So tell us a little bit about his background that kind of led us to this.
Yeah. So, my husband, his parents got divorced when he was fairly young, and his mother was a working as a single mom for a while.
Wow.
So, she was pretty amazing. She went back to grad school and became, she got her master's and became a social worker. And so he grew up seeing his mom being, for a number of years she was, a single mom, and then she ended up remarrying, but she always worked, right? And
Wow.
she
Mhm.
always was, like you said, they are partners. And so for him, for him being my husband, right? Like he always had that strong woman figure in his life that also, I mean, she did amazing things at home, right? Like we always joke that she makes like great food and all this stuff, but so she was like feminine, but also an equal contributing member to the family. So I thought that definitely influenced him.
Yeah. And then tell us about the triathlons that you guys do.
Yeah. So my husband has always been doing triathlons like since like after college. I never really did anything. And when I met him, he was gonna run the New York City Marathon, so I was like, oh, I'll just run the marathon to kind of like spend more time with him, right? And so got hurt, and every time I tried to run, I would always injure something, like my knee or my back or something. And then he was like, well, you should try triathlons because they're allow you to train different muscles. And so I started doing tries in 2012, and my life has never been the same. I don't get injured anymore, or more importantly, it gives me the ability to kind of like release stress, but also it's like a constructive way to, like, I get my best thinking, all my strategy for work, all my ideas on how to deal with tough situations. I always think that I get them either when I'm running, biking, or swimming, even though I really haven't been doing swimming that much lately. But it's it definitely it's a great outlet.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you are an executive. You are a married woman. You have two children who have their own ambitions. I think they play lacrosse, right? Or anything else? Yeah. And then,
Well, my oldest one plays the bagpipes. My youngest one plays the bass guitar.
oh,
RC is my oldest. He also plays football. Jack also wrestles. So yeah, so we are super busy.
yeah. And then you have a puppy.
My baby, Boomer. I'm surprised I closed the door. That's why he's not here. But yeah, he follows us around. And now the new thing is that now Boomer hikes, because you cannot be a real Californian if you don't hike. And
Yeah.
so now Boomer goes on hikes
Yeah.
with me.
And then you still prioritize your health, your well-being, and do sports or whatever it is that helps you to kind of decompress, but also straighten your thoughts. So that's such an important thing, because I've made the mistake very often to kind of deprioritize myself, above all the other things that need to happen. But I've learned that it's important to do that, and everybody benefits from it at the end of the day.
And this is another thing that I learned from Rob. Rob is my husband. When the boys were little, he would always like encourage me to go out and get out of the house. Let me take them so that you can take a break, right?
Yeah,
And same thing with exercise. And for me, originally, I mean, I won't lie, I started exercising because I wanted to lose weight. I was not happy, and I just wanted to lose weight. And now, um I don't know, almost 15 years later, it's, I mean, the weight is a benefit, but it's a mental thing, right? I have completely changed the way I live my life because of it. Because now the only way I can get it in is if I work out in the morning. I'm not a morning person, but I get up at 5 just so that I can get my run or my bike in before meetings start, right? So I go to bed at 9:30 because it's the only way I can get up at 5, right? But and I know that I'm a much easier person to live and work with when I exercise.
Yeah.
So I think it does. I think it's important to just do something to take care of yourself, right? We are so, especially as women, we're so programmed to give and take care of others that you cannot do a good job if you don't. If you cannot take care of others if you don't take care of yourself, right? Like just like in the airplanes, put your mask on first. So
Exactly.
we have to learn that.
Yes, words of wisdom right there. So what's next? Anything that you're working on, trying to learn a new skill? Although it seems like you know quite a lot.
I'm super excited. So I started out when I came out here to manage data center engineering operations. That's really the electrical and mechanical systems that support the data center. But as I mentioned, my background is mostly on the IT side, right? So I am transitioning to a new role, managing it's data center operations. So you kind of take the engineering title out, but it's really managing the hosts and all the racks and servers, basically, you know, that we sell to our customers. So I'm super excited because it's a different area within data centers, right? And so I think that that's kind of like I don't know. I always say that the constant is that there is no constant, right? You're always evolving, you're always learning, and so I wouldn't say that I was, you know, done learning on my previous role, but this is definitely something new, and so it's exciting. And also, the thing that I think is amazing about Amazon is that there are so many different areas, right? So we obviously have the Amazon.com, but we have Amazon Pharmacy, right? Amazon Studios. There's all these different and the innovation that we're doing. So I'm super excited about all the different opportunities, right? Like I always think, well, I probably have 15, 20 years of work left, right? And there's more things for me to learn that there are years to work. So
yes, so you won't be bored anytime soon.
Thank goodness.
How is Amazon changing how they are hiring and managing people to be more inclusive in the workforce?
So I've only been with Amazon for about 16 months, right? So I don't have a lot of history with it, but I can tell you that we spend a huge amount of time teaching and learning all sorts of different aspects within the inclusion, diversity, and equity realm, right? I'm super impressed because not only do we talk about it in day-to-day meetings, right? We also have, there are more fireside chats and more trainings available that I can take. But for example, during the protests during the summer, we had a whole learning day on Juneteenth and how to recognize some of those challenges that maybe more privileged people are not aware of. I have taken a number of classes on how to deal with all the different biases, right? Like you have unconscious bias, but you also there's all these different biases that we all have. And one thing that I've learned is that it's not bad to have them. It's human nature to have them, right? Like we just need to be aware of them.
Right.
We spend a lot of time as managers also making sure that we are conscientious about our candidates, right? We're you always hear the stories of quotas and all this stuff. It's really just giving people an opportunity. So I've taken a lot of training on how to remove those unconscious biases from reviewing resumes, right? Like techniques that you can do to kind of like force yourself to be more fair and give people that equity and that fair chance, right?
Right.
I've seen an increase in not only gender but also different cultures within the data center. It's like especially on the engineering side, it's pretty traditionally white male, and so we're always trying to figure out ways to encourage different types of people to be interested in the jobs, right? So I have a program with my recruiters. We're trying to get the word out to college and also kids in technical schools, right? That this is just to give them awareness of the different roles that are out there, so that they can maybe study the fields that would help them get those jobs.
Exactly. And are there any programs that they're funding or giving access to younger kids so that they can already get acquainted with the field before committing to it in terms of college or the workforce?
Yeah, so we have community ambassadors, and they work with the different schools. We do Girls in Tech, right? That it used to be that it was a day to go to the schools because of COVID and everyone going virtual. The benefit of it is that now I think it gives us a wider reach, because now we have more opportunities to have these conversations, right? Like I've participated in a couple of a lot of times they become kind of like podcast kind of setups, so then you can distribute them, right? So I'm very aware of that. There's also intern programs for college students, and I believe this year we're actually hiring people from 2-year community college, so that they actually spend the summer with us, see what it is like, and get before, just get exposed to it, right?
Right, exactly. Getting your apprenticeship or something like that, and then that's great. That's great that they're giving those opportunities to perhaps not all of the Ivy League school kids, but also community colleges as well, because there is truly a gap in terms of technology talent. I see cybersecurity talent, so it's kind of up to the companies to create those bridges, the pathways into their workforce. So it's great that Amazon is doing that.
Yeah, I know that at the beginning of the school year, we donate, like it kind of varies by region, but we donated all these tablets, right? Like so that people it's very different doing online learning if you're in a affluent community, and then so it's a big discrepancy. So we donated a lot of money and a lot of tablets, just so that underprivileged kids could have a fighting chance, right?
Yes. Any recommendations to young children from any kind of background in terms of how to prepare for the next chapter, whether it's middle, high, college, middle, high school, college, and beyond? Any words of wisdom from Francis?
Yeah, I think I would encourage them to like keep an open mind, but also try different things, right? You don't have like you need to have a plan, but it doesn't have to like be perfect, and it's okay to change your mind, right?
Yes.
Um, I think the important thing is to continue to challenge yourself and um, reach out to people, right? Like, don't be shy. I wish in hindsight that I had maybe talked to older adults or older um, people about what they did, just to get a sense for what it is to um, do whatever job, right?
Right.
I don't. I was always so focused on perfection or making sure that I had, I'm a planner, so it's like that I had my list, and it's like I think it's good to try a lot of different things, right? And don't cut yourself short.
Yes. And surround yourself with people who are in your corner, who support you in making those life-changing decisions.
Absolutely. Yeah, for like I have had amazing friends, and of course my husband that usually sits right there. And if it wasn't for them, I'm sure my life would have been a lot different.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what is your definition of success versus failure? How do you define that?
Success. There's all these different quotes, and a lot of people smarter than I have made all these statements. But I read this the other day, and it really stuck in my mind. And Nelson Mandela says that and I'm paraphrasing, you only think it's impossible until it's done. And I think that kind of um, summarizes it for me. You don't know your full potential. You don't know how much you can accomplish until you try. And if you don't make it, right? Like, I did not become an astronaut, but I am much better off than I ever thought I would be, right? But if you cut yourself short, then you'll never know. So I think
Yeah.
success is trying and having that perseverance to keep trying.
Yes. So well said. I love it. I actually gave my son a Christmas card saying if you can always shoot for the moon, and if you don't succeed, you will still land it amongst the stars. So it's always important to try. So what is your purpose? What is your why, Francis?
My why, for many years, it was to prove that I could do it, right?
I like that
It,
why.
it, it
Good.
was it was uh it was kind of like a drive within me. But now, as I've gotten older, I think I'm comfortable knowing that I can do it. I think that in a smaller scale, is demonstrating that grit and that perseverance to my kids, and then also if I can inspire one, I don't know, it doesn't have to be a girl, but if it's a girl, even better, right? That um, you do amazing things. And so just trying to change the world one little bit at a time.
Kind of wrap it up. What are you grateful for?
It's easier to say what I'm not grateful for. I have been super um fortunate my entire life, right? Like you said, there were all these um opportunities that came my way. So I am grateful for so many things, right? My parents, my grandparents that encouraged me, my husband that continues to believe in me, my kids. that motivate me. All the people I work with or I have worked with, right, that in different ways influence me. I read this quote the other day that said, this was Thomas Jefferson, that says something along the lines of, I believe in luck, and the harder I work, the luckier I get. And so I am grateful for all the different opportunities that have been presented, because I recognize that not everyone has as many opportunities as I've had.
Yeah, but you leaned in too. you grabbed them, and you didn't say no to them either. So it's a two-way street, I think. That thing called luck. Well, I am grateful to have crossed paths with you, Frances. You have inspired me also to keep growing and learning and leaning in. And I love that you're on this podcast, because you are truly kind of the living proof that you can do it all, you can have it all, and you don't have to compromise on who you are, on what your dreams are, and what matters to you. So you are that poster child of what can be done and what is possible. So, and on top of that, all of that with grace and humility. So thank you, darling, for joining this podcast. It's been a tremendous honor, and I'm humbled to know you and to have you as my friend. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And the one thing that I'll say is that it's not all perfect, right? I have missed, I'm late a lot, and so, but it's fine, right? Like, we just have to do our best.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's not, nothing is ever perfect.
Yeah.
They always say this balance thing, but it's just doing it, and doing it best as you possibly can, but it can be done.
Correct.
Yeah. But that's a very good nuance to add to that. Absolutely. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm ready to play now. Put me in the game now. I came here to prove it. I'm ready to do it. I can't be afraid now. Put me on the stage now. I'm ready to rage now. I feel like an animal stuck in a cage, and I'm ready to break out. My time. None of you people can tell me to stop. This time, like the last time, you better get ready to race to the top. I'm ready to do this, show you what the truth is. I step on the field, it's time to get real. I'm feeling so ruthless. My time. None of you people can tell me to stop. Lower the lights down. Hand over my crown. Hand over my heart. I do this for my town. I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud. My time. None of you people can tell me to stop. Yeah. So what are you afraid of? Those feelings are made up. Get in the game, your moment of fame. Show them what you made of. It's time that we stand up. It's time that we man up. For anyone asking who is the best, we putting our hands up. My time. Nothing can keep me from reaching the top. This time, like the last time, I'm moving so fast, I'm ready to ride. I'm ready to throw down. It's time for the showdown. I'm ready to rise. Don't be surprised, I'll take on the world now. My time. None of you people can tell me to stop. Lower the lights down. Hand over my crown. Hand over my heart. I do this for my town. I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud. My time. None of you people can tell me to stop. My time. None of you people can tell me to stop. My town, my crown. We know what it takes to be reaching the top. We're reaching the top. We're reaching the top. We know what it takes to be reaching the top. My time. None of you people can tell me to stop. My town, my crown. We know what it takes to be reaching the top. We're reaching the top. We're reaching the top. We know what it takes to be reaching the top. Lower the lights down. Hand over my crown. down. Hand over my heart, I do this for my town.